And welcome to the Goldenrod Podcast. I'm Ben. As always, I'm joined by fellow Pokemon enthusiast Conor to bring you some of the latest and greatest Pokemon news and a few laughs along the way. This week, we're talking about ideas for Pokemon Legends Alola, as well as following up on our type rebalancing conversation from last week's episode. And finally, we'll be discussing a recent Games Radar article about why Pokemon Gen 10 shouldn't fall back into old habits. As always, you can jump to a topic using the timestamps in the description below. Conor, how are we this week?
I'm doing all right. A little bit stressed, trying to launch a business and all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit stressful. Mostly just annoyed because there's still no Pokemon news. We are really scraping the bottom of the barrel now.
We got quite lucky this week that we had an article that I think is a good conversation to have, which will be later on in the episode. And then, of course, listeners submitted questions and topics are
that's the best bit. That's
fantastic.
Always the best bit.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, I absolutely agreed. I mean, it's because the listeners think of topics and things that we just, I guess, wouldn't, or we don't have the time to think about. It's just great to hear that people want our feedback, our thoughts, our opinions on their ideas.
Yeah. I mean, this is an open conversation, and I think bringing in the audience questions and things like that makes it an open conversation with the audience as well.
Agreed. It's absolutely fantastic. And the fact that we sometimes get questions that lead on to follow-on conversations about previous topics is absolutely fantastic, which is what Tony has done, regular listener, following on from our conversation last week where we were discussing opportunities and ideas to update the Pokemon typing system. I think we agreed that it's very difficult to do because if you start changing one thing, it has this knock-on effect on all the other typings and it just throws it all out of whack. So Tony's come up with the idea of, if we can't get changes to the type chart, could an increase in dual typing moves to those typings that need the boost help to balance things, like Flying Press being fighting and flying, or how Freeze Dry is an ice type move that is super effective on water. Maybe having more of these to pair with Terrestrialization is the key. What's your thoughts and ideas for more moves like this?
Okay, so what if... So 1,000 Arrows is the one that immediately comes to mind, which is the only ground type move that can hit flying types?
Correct, yeah.
What if that had instead been a ground rock type? So not only was it a ground type move, but it was also super effective against flying.
Oh, okay. So you open... So it's a move that just opens it up for... Maybe because there's a limitation of the Pokemon. For example, it has a load of weaknesses, or it isn't able to hit super effective on a load of Pokemon. Maybe they give it a move that just helps to diversify it a little bit more and open it up to, okay, if we can't change this Pokemon's typings, we can give it better moves to make it more viable. So I think a Pokemon that would really benefit from that is a Bomber Snow. As an ice grass type, it has so many weaknesses, which means that it's not viable in a competitive format. So perhaps the way around that is to give it moves that allow it to overcome some of those weaknesses. So, for example, it is quad weak to fire. Could you perhaps give it a move that is super effective against fire type?
Yeah. I am just looking at the type chart again now. I think the issue you're going to run into is trying to make a move that isn't itself quad effective against a single typing.
Okay.
So flying and fighting aren't super effective against the same types.
Correct, yeah.
Trying to think of a Pokemon that is quad weak to flying, or is weak to... Yeah. There isn't a Pokemon that's both weak to flying and fighting types. Is there a dual typing that's weak to both? Yeah, here we go.
Dark bug. Is there a dark bug? There will be a dark bug.
Yeah.
Wait, does bug resist fighting? No, it doesn't, does it?
No, bug does resist fighting.
Oh, so it's not...
So there you go.
Right, okay. Right. Normal... So it have to be normal bug, which we haven't got. Normal grass. Have we got normal grass?
I don't
I'm sure we
so.
have. Dark grass. There we go.
Okay. So let's have a look at like Shiftry.
Yeah, Shiftry. Yeah.
Versus Flying Press. This is actually something I've never even considered. Okay, so we go up against Reddit. It's a fighting type move that does both flying and fighting type damages. It will deal 2 times damage to a Pokemon weak to flying and 2 times damage to those weak to fighting. For example, if you deal 2 times to fighting and grass and 2 times to dark and normal, there is, however, a drawback where it deals neutral damage to types like rock and steel because the flying type effect on it. Okay. What about... It's also the only move, I believe, that is 4 times effective on Deerling, which is grass and normal.
Oh, there is a grass. Oh, I knew that. In the back of my mind somewhere, I knew that. Okay. Is this...
It will deal 4 times damage. So yeah, this isn't... I think you couldn't have it do 4 times damage against something that was a single type still. I think that might be a bit rough.
Overkill. Yeah. Is this too niche? Is that the problem here? Because it feels like you're giving Pokemon a very specific move that will only affect such a limited pool. Is the better example that Tony's given here Freeze Dry? So one of those moves where the typing, Freeze Dry is an ice type move against a water type. Typically is not very effective, but in this case is super effective. Is the option to give more Pokemon those type of moves, such as flying arrows, 1,000 arrows that you mentioned before, those moves that kind of break the rules but are limited in scope in terms of their availability, so they don't completely shift the meta in the competitive scene.
You could mix electric with a lot of things.
Have you got an example? What are you thinking?
Well, for instance, electric is... Oh no, wrong. I did that wrong. Ignore me. Electric has 1 weakness, not 1 super effective. Ignore me.
Is there something that does only have 1 super effective? Dark is only super effective against... Oh no.
Ghost
no,
and
ignore me.
Psychic.
Fairies, no.
Fairy's got 3.
Yeah.
And this is why the type chart is so difficult. Dark.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you mix dark and steel. I don't know what would be a dark steel type move, but you just had what's Bisharp's final version called now?
King Gambit.
So you know that Kowtow Strike or whatever it's called, where it bows down. What if that had been a dark steel move? Would it have made King Gambit better? Would it have done anything for it?
Are we saying so because it's a dark steel move in this hypothetical situation? That means it's super effective against Psychic, Ghost, Ice,
Fairy,
and Poison, Rock. Oh, I like that. I actually like that a lot. These dual moves.
Like it's not an easy one to immediately implement.
No,
because I'm now trying to think. I mean, what have we got? Is there Fairy Psychics? Nothing's popping to mind.
I think they'd have to limit this in terms of they aren't TMs, they aren't TRs, they are literally maybe just egg moves. So you have to put the legwork in to get them, but you're limited with the number of Pokemon that have these moves that are dual typings.
So you'd be looking at expanding them out as well, so it wouldn't just be a King Gambit only. Like, it wouldn't be a
No, I think
signature move like Hawlucha's one is.
So this is what I'm trying to avoid of suddenly every Pokemon or most Pokemon have access to one of these moves. It feels like that just completely shifts it. It feels like something where they would cherry pick some of the Pokemon for each generation and go, okay, these are the ones that we think will be the meta Pokemon or the counters to the meta Pokemon. Let's give these specific Pokemon these quad effective moves. Quad effective doesn't sound like the right dual typing moves.
Yeah, dual typing moves is the way forward.
Yeah.
So you got two ways to go about it. Either, because they are different. Either the flying press approach, which is you give 2 types to a move, which, as we've just seen, is a little bit tricky to kind of work out. And I think, like, I'm looking at the type chart and I'm finding it hard. I think if you've suddenly got to work around this and think about it, it's going to be very difficult in a competitive scene. I mean, even for players just playing through the game, if there's suddenly a bunch of different dual type moves, I think it's a very cool concept. The other option is you go down the freeze dry route, the 1,000 arrows route, where it's like, yes, it's this type of move, it does this type of damage, but it overcomes this immunity, or it is super effective against something it wouldn't usually be. So, for instance, I could imagine a electric move that was like overcurrent or something, and it's super effective against steel all of a sudden because it like shorts out and explodes the steel, that kind of thing. Or like 1,000 arrows already hits flying type, so we can get things that overcome immunities as well. Is there ghost type moves that could hit a normal type Pokemon and vice versa?
I think there should be. I think there should be. And the way you would balance that, I think, is that, by having these moves that allow you in certain situations to actually hurt your opponent without the need to pivot Pokemon or use a move that doesn't benefit from stab. Maybe you just make those moves a little bit weaker. So, for example, your idea of an electric type move that can hit steel types, yes, you can make it, either effective or super effective, but maybe it is a case of it'll do less damage than maybe, a fighting type move from a fighting type Pokemon would do, because that is, you're not going against the current on that one. Like maybe that's how you balance it out.
So one that's just popped in my head is Poltergeist. Poltergeist is a move that, attacks the user with its own item. I could see that hitting normal type Pokemon. It being a ghost type move, but it's like, it's not hitting you with its ghostly figure. It's just picking up your own item and beating you with it. So you've already got the drawback of if you don't have an item, it doesn't do anything. So let it hit normal type Pokemon. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah. I think you could quite easily give each typing a move that does something that is almost counterintuitive of, those moves where you've played Pokemon for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and right, I can't use electric move on ground types because it'll just do nothing. But then there's that one electric type that comes along that actually does allow you to break the rules almost. And I feel like, go on, a poison move that hits steel. There's an ability that allows
there it is.
You to poison steel Pokemon. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So there are these odd things here and there, but I think that they're very. I couldn't tell you what Pokemon has corrosion. And they feel very niche in terms of, they're so specific with these Pokemon that I think they need to open it up a little bit more. And I think Tony's right that instead of just changing the type chart in some way, which creates all these added issues, that you just, add some moves here and there in every generation that allow you to do something that you typically wouldn't be able to do.
Okay, is there any typing that you think should hit super effective on another type and doesn't?
Oh, let me get the type chart of Pokemon again. Let me see if I can find it. It's Wikipedia. Oh, okay, right. So anything that I think we touched on this a little
Yeah, we
bit.
did, but I can't remember it for the life of me. That was a week ago.
Okay. So I just been very. Kind of goes back to what we were saying last week. That ice and water and ice and fire feel like. Struggling now, looking at this, to think of ones that I was like, oh yeah, the definitely ones that I would pick. Is there any for you or not? What was the point you were trying to make, I guess?
So again, it's thinking, because we talked about it last week, that ice shouldn't be resisted by water. There should be, ice should beat water realistically, and that's why we got freeze dry rather than rebalancing the typings. So is there something where you go, that doesn't feel quite right, that should be different? Can, instead of replacing it with an entire rejig of the type chart, can we just give a move in there instead?
Okay. So, fire against water. I think that there must be a fire type move that is almost, the fire is that hot that it is super effective on water because it evaporates.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Because like the way that works is, I don't think it completely breaks fire types because they're still weak to water, and you are taking a risk keeping your fire type Pokemon in, because if it's slower than the water type, it's going to hit you for super effective damage before you get the opportunity to hit it for super effective damage.
So the only issue I have with that, and again, I'm looking at this purely from a game design point of view, right? So we have our example of freeze dry, which is a case of we can take away a resistance, and that's the only real change, is a resistance. Whereas with fire hitting water, sure, water resists fire, but then fire has an answer to its counter. It has an answer to the answer, which isn't really what we're looking for here. We need to remove a resistance and nothing else. I mean, again, Thousand Arrows is a little bit different because it's a ground type move that hits flying type, which you usually be immune to it. But it's also on Zygarde only. It's a signature move, and we all know that they like to make legendary Pokemon busted. So try and find a type that feels like it could or should hit another typing and is otherwise resisted by it. I'm asking a lot here.
Okay. I think you mentioned normal ghost. Okay, so you came up with an example of the ghost being able to hit the normal type with the poltergeist attack. It feels like normal should have something against ghost as well, in terms of because at the moment normal can't hit ghost. But it almost feels like the normal is almost, okay, I don't believe in ghosts, and therefore you have no power over me, therefore I'm able to beat you in some way. It feels like there should be a move that normal types have. And I know that the answer to that is it detect, or what? There's a move that allows you to, foresight, that allows you to identify ghost type moves and hit them. That's a little bit different because you need to set up with one move and then follow up with another move. And the problem is you could just swap out your ghost type to get around that. It feels like there needs to be a normal type move there that allows you to do that. Again, electric ground is another one where electric does absolutely nothing to ground. However, we've seen in the anime that electric can be strong enough to actually inflict pain on Onyx. So why is there not an electric move that allows you to do that?
Yeah, I could see
What
that.
else have we got? Poison Steel's covered with corrosion. Ground flying is covered by 1,000 arrows. Psychic Dark. Does it feel like there should be a psychic move that allows you to hit dark types? Not super effective. It just allows you to hit them.
You already have a move that allows you to hit them like Foresight. You already have that allows them to hit dark type moves.
Yeah, that rings a bell. I couldn't tell you what it was though. Because it always seems strange to me that Mewtwo is this powerhouse of a psychic Pokemon, and yet wouldn't be able to hit, a relatively weak dark type Pokemon.
Miracle Eye.
That's well.
So here's what I'm thinking of: a bug type move that is super effective against flying Pokemon, because there are so many bugs that do prey on birds.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And are you trying to tell me that a Scyther versus a Fletchling is gonna be resisted with all of its no.
Yeah.
Bug should have an answer to flying. And I don't think that's quite as busted as what Freeze Dry is, because you can put Freeze Dry on pretty much anything.
Freeze Dry is busted. I got caught out by that when
Freeze Dry. The thing is, you can put Freeze Dry on a non-water. You can put Freeze Dry on a water Pokemon, and then they've just got answers to other water Pokemon.
Yeah, it's a little bit busted, isn't it? Okay, so our answer to the original type chart question is not to change the type chart, not to look at the moves that counter their counters, but to look at introducing moves that allow you to go from a move that hits a Pokemon that's typically resisted to at least being effective.
Yes, okay. I think so.
That doesn't feel as broken, does it? Because it doesn't feel like
immune to effective or resisted to super effective.
Okay.
So you've almost got two jumps effectively.
Yeah, because I don't think you could go from it does nothing against that Pokemon to it's super effective. That feels like too big of a jump. So maybe that's the way that we address it. And obviously, let us know in the comments section, because I'm sure there are other moves or other abilities that allow you to do this that we're just not aware of. It'd be great to know, to be quite honest with you. Because like fighting flying, it feels like, fighting, flying resists fighting.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of feels to me that I can understand that while it's still in the air, but the moment it has to get close, and there's an argument that fighting is up close grappling. Once it's got a hold of a flying type mon, it doesn't matter if it's a flying type mon anymore. Like, its advantage is nullified because it's no longer in the air. So is there, an ability around that as well?
It depends, because not all flying type moves are physical, and if you consider that it's using like Air Slash and staying above you, what are you gonna do? Focus Blast.
Glare at it.
Missed.
Okay. So we've kind of come up with an answer to this type rebalancing question that we had.
It's not an easy question. As soon as it comes to rebalancing the type chart, it's never going to be an easy question.
No, it's not. But thank you very much, Tony, for your question. If you've got a comment, question, or topic, you can reach us by leaving a comment on our podcast on YouTube, by emailing goldenrodpod@gmail.com, by leaving it on our Discord channel, or by using the hashtag goldenrodpod on Twitter. Someone else that did this a couple of weeks ago now was Tara's TCG fan. I don't know I don't remember if it was on Discord or on YouTube, but their question was, with Legend ZA being in the Kalos region, I'm a big 3DS era fan, so I'm hyped we get some content from that era before I'm an old man. What would you want a Legends Alola to focus on and or expand on? So I think you've already got some ideas around this, Conor, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
But I've also just had a really sudden idea about the last one as well. Aqua Cutter should be super effective against steel types.
Agreed, because pressurized... We said this last week.
Yeah, we said this last week. That's why it just jumped to me.
Yeah, pressurized water jets. I have seen them cut through things that water should not be able to cut through. So, yeah, I completely agree there. Anyway,
right. ideas for an Alola Legends game. So Sun and Moon was all about the birth of the Pokemon League. Like they were building the Pokemon League for the very first time. So if we're going to do a Legends Alola game, it needs to be about the birth of the trials. Where did they come from? Why do they exist?
I like that. Okay.
And I think what you do is you have your character be the first one to go through a set of trials that aren't necessarily set by the Kahunas and stuff like that. They're set by the Island Guardians. So they play more of a pivotal role.
Yes, I like that.
And then maybe they're trying to do it because they're trying to bring some kind of cohesion amongst the 4 islands because the Kahunas are all at each other's throats.
Okay, I like that.
And then you've got that same kind of energy you had in Legends Arceus with the 2 fighting clans. You've now got 4 different clans all against each other, and you're going to island, doing all these trials, winning over the Kahunas. And you've got Total Pokemon as your boss battles.
I like that a lot. Just to tie in with that, because I don't think you can have a protagonist that lives from one of these islands, because obviously,
no, they need to be an outsider. Them all going up.
So the way you do that is in one of the islands. There's a little, I want to say fishing community, but it's not. They're all there. They live on ships and they're just docked. And I can't remember the name of the town that they are. But there's like a boat that looks like Sharpedo, for example. Mm-hmm. You could have it where your main character is actually lives on one of these boats and just their life is a bit like, in Moana, have you seen that film?
Yep.
Where the family originally just sailed the oceans. That's how you do that. So they stumble upon Alola, and the reason the totem Pokemon choose these and the Island Garden, choose this hero is because they realize, oh, they're an outsider. They have no biases. They have no preconceived notions of these islands. They are coming at it from a neutral perspective. They're the perfect person. And maybe the way you have it is that the opening scene is the totem Pokemon causing a storm that forces their little voyage of, ships to just drift into the Alola region.
Nice.
And that's how they get involved in the story. So it doesn't need any of the, Arceus time travel, but there's still that theme of the legends are getting involved and you are supporting a higher power.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I like it. I think
that's how
I love the idea of them being like some kind of wayfinder as well. I also think they need to either be, I don't know which one you make it. They're either Unovan or they're from Galar.
Why those two, out of curiosity?
Because obviously Hawaii is technically part of the United States, and when I say technically, I mean it is. It's part of the United States.
It is,
but it's not part of not part of the mainland. There you go.
Yes.
That's why I say technically. I apologize. Yes, you are part of the United States, despite the fact you have your own culture and heritage and all that kind of stuff. But I believe it was first discovered by the English. So discovered in the West. Discovered by the West. The first Western country, to the best of my knowledge and quick research, was the English. So, I love this idea of someone from Galar or someone from Unova coming over to the islands. Do we go down? Oh, I've just made myself cringe a little bit. Does that go a little bit white savior? Is that a little bit white savior of like the 4 islands are battling to each other and we need to get the outsider to come in and fix it?
But we are the heroes, right?
No!
No, the way you have that, okay, so the way you get around that is literally, when you start off the game, you customize your character. Then it doesn't matter, does it? I say it doesn't matter. You're a silent protagonist. But this is, I'm not sure about that, actually. I don't know how you get around that, personally. Because ultimately you do just choose your character, don't you? And you customize them a little bit. Unless we went with, the first non-white canon character.
Yeah. Actually, that's a fair point. Random thought. So all of our characters have been customizable now since what? Gen
6?
6?
No. Definitely Gen 7. Gen 6 had... Trying to remember the Gen 6 did have some customization, but I think it was predominantly hair color, skin tone. I think you could change, but not much. I think it was predominantly white.
Oh yeah, you could pick very white. Asian, really, is kind of what they're aiming for there. But,
yeah,
you know, very white, white or tanned, really.
Yeah, it was I think it was Sun and Moon that was the first one that was, okay, right, you can, you know, there were more skin tones to choose from. And it was actually, I think Gen 9's the first one where it went, yeah, okay, right, go for it.
Kind of does look East Asian, South Asian, and Nordic.
Nordic, yeah.
It is blonde hair, blue eyes. They're not, it's just Nordic.
Yeah. You know what? Actually,
but my point, sorry, just to finish the thought there.
Go on.
Despite the fact that we've had customizable characters, canonically, they're still white.
They are, yeah.
Which we don't need to do that. Surely we can just put out in some of the marketing materials that no, this one is canonically black. This one's canonically South Asian.
Go for it. And you know what you do? Thinking about if you want Galar, if you want someone who isn't white, you just make them an ancestor of Nessa. Because she's got the water typing. Yeah, she's got the water typing. So, you know, that ocean kind of living on the waves and whatnot. There you go. Go for it. I don't see any issues with it. And you know what? You do. I think that says more about you than it does anyone else. Because it's just a
game, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we've decided the kind of the story elements, the story beats. We've decided, you know, how our characters stumble upon this area and their journey. Two things that I think are quite prominent in Sun and Moon, and whether or not you think these need to be rolled into a Legends game: the Aether Paradise and the Z crystals. Do you think they need to be rolled into the game in some way? And if so, how?
Z crystals, yes. Aether Paradise, no.
Agreed.
I think you have some kind of old system in place. So, for instance, you know how you had the what were they called in Legends Arceus? The Galaxy Squadron. What were they called? The Galaxy
Squad? Like that. I can't remember what they were, but something like that. Yeah.
You know, you had the Pearl team, the Diamond team, and the Galaxy team.
Yeah.
I think you would have some form of Aether adjacent group.
Okay. Yeah.
That, you know, they derived this idea from much later down the road.
Yes. You know what you could do? Okay, so I think this Aether group, this Aether team, I think they, you know, Pokemon are very good, Game Freak are very good in terms of, okay, let's, even though they repeat certain like characters, beats, teams, they never do them in the same way. So is there a way that they can do the Aether team in a way that hasn't been done before? And I think that maybe you just make them the out and out good guys. Like there is not even like an end of game turn. It's like, no, they are just like good and helpful throughout. And, you know, their initial point about their initial plot point is, no, we're just here to help Pokemon. That's like ultimately what we do. And it's only over time that you start to see, you know, between the Legends game and Alola, that some of the people that have more of a scientific mind start to lean towards, no, we shouldn't be roaming the oceans. We should set up shop here and eventually like do experiments and stuff like that to find out more about the power of Pokemon. But, you know, so you can see that through line of where they are in Legends, where they are in, you know, in Sun and Moon, and kind of like that middle thread isn't explained in either game, but you can kind of see the the knock-on effects of what your character does and how it will eventually lead into.
Or you replace the entire team with one guy called Arthur, who's just a nutter conspiracy theorist who constantly talks about Pokemon being from space and there's even bigger, scarier Pokemon out there beyond the stars. And he's
that would
how
actually
you
be
find the
quite
Ultra
funny.
Beasts.
Oh, I quite like that. That'd be quite fun. You know what I'd like, actually? Make him... because we have psychics in Pokemon. It's not explained. It's just, we have all these magical creatures, but there's also technology that's ahead of our world, and there's also psychics, which is weird, but fine, whatever. Maybe you just have it where you keep revisiting his base, and every time you go, he's just like scribbled, I had a vision of a monster from a parallel world, and it's basically just a really rubbish drawing of Guzzlord. And anyone else would be just like, what is this? But you as a player go, oh, okay, this guy's actually right. But we just keep ignoring him, insulting him, putting him down, when actually, like, he knows what's going on.
And then you can have somebody from, like, the Ultra Recon squad show up and kidnap him.
No, actually, you could do, couldn't you? You could do. Actually, I quite like that.
He knows too much. We got to take him away.
He knows too much.
We've been watching you from across the stars. You know things. Stop it.
I like that a lot, to be quite honest with you. Because again, it's kind of, okay, what did we have in Legends Arceus? We had we had multiple characters that were out of time. They were taken from the future and dumped in the past. Maybe in Legends of Alola, you reverse it. Again, not repeating what they've done before. You take someone from the past and you plant them in the future. Maybe that's the way that you go around it.
Okay.
But who's the... I know it'd be difficult to do because the Sun and Moon games have already gone out, but maybe it's the guy that is literally in Guzzlord's world. I think he's the only human left who's just like, you rock up through an ultra wormhole, and I think he goes along like, what are you doing here? Like, no one should be here. Guzzlord ate everything. What are you doing here? So maybe you just take him and just, okay, let's give him a bit of a backstory in the Alola game.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I think that I like the idea of going to Guzzlord's world again and exploring that whole timeline of events and how that happened. Maybe he foresees it. Maybe he, as this psychic character we've come up with, maybe he foresees the end. Maybe the world you're playing in is the world that gets eaten by Guzzlord, and he foresees it.
I love that. I love that a lot.
Yeah, that'd be so cool.
Don't think about it too much.
Yeah.
Everyone that you know and love dies.
I mean, no, because you prevent it. You go out of your way to prevent it somehow. The difficulty with I love this idea of like, you're a character from the past brought into the future, but do you mean the future is in the future of the Pokemon world? Or do you mean the future is in the present day and this character is being brought from the past? Either way, the difficulty you're going to have is you as a player. Like, it made sense to us playing a character from the future coming into the past, because that was also our understanding of the Pokemon world. Like, all the knowledge we already possess of the Pokemon world was kind of what our character knew, and we saw the world through their eyes. They worked very well as a point of view character for us, because we'd basically had the same experience of them. We've been taken out of the present, plopped into the past. If you try and do it the other way around and go, yes, I'm from the past, I have all these experiences that you've never, ever seen, but I'm now in the present. Or you go to the future, which, well, then you're just opening up the future world of Pokemon. And what does that even look like? As you say, the technology is already crazy as it is. What does the future world of Pokemon look like? We've seen Guzzlord's world, and we've seen that at some alternate universe, they all turn into machines. Like, it never ends well.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, unfortunately. But I would love to see where it ends up. I'd love to see Game Freak go a little bit crazy of, okay, it isn't just the modern world with a few little tweaks. I'd love to see them go, okay, this is what happens. What's the knock-on effect of Pokemon technology? All these different things that, in 100 years in our world would would look way different than the Pokemon world. Because it would. Love to see that. And maybe the Legends is the game to do that.
Would they end up locking themselves in, though? So, for instance, the Pokédexes. The Pokédexes have always kind of looked like computers of the day, if that makes sense. Like, I think it was, they've got more and more smartphone-esque over the years, and now they are literally just a smartphone. How do you go, okay, we're going to predict what Pokédex look like in 100 years, but then 10 years from now, our computers are way more advanced than anybody could predict them to be in 100 years' time, and suddenly the games in 10 years' time look more advanced than the 100 years advancement? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It's a bit like, you ever seen the Alien films?
Yeah, big fan.
Yeah, so like the technology in them, I'm sure at the time of the film's creation, looked like astounding. Wow, can't believe this is what we're gonna have. I watched the first Alien film when I was about 18.
And their
17,
spaceships
18.
are still written on DOS, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the point you're trying to make, isn't it? Of how do you future-proof these games? And I think there's only so much you can do, but I think you go down the maybe you go down the route of if it's really far in the future, maybe it's a case of your character is quite poor, or maybe they find a piece of technology which is dated and old. So it is like, well, look at this retro phone from 100 years ago. Oh wow, that's really cool. I'd love to get that up and running again, because then you're not locked into the technology of the future. You can rely on what's currently available. I mean, it doesn't work for everything, because what about transport, buildings? It's difficult. I think they just have to pick a theme and go with it, and then just explain it's an alternative version of Earth. It takes place in the Pokemon multiverse.
Or we go down the other route and we go to the future where the Paradox Pokemon come from, and the world has fallen apart, and we've all devolved back to effectively Legends Arceus style technology, and then we just have Horizon Zero Dawn.
I'd love Horizon Zero Dawn. I would absolutely love that.
Let's go fight robot Pokemon. Let's do it.
We've got the robot Pokemon. We've got the Legends Arceus, like, catching and kind of battling mechanic. The pieces are there. They just need to push them together. You know what? The more we talk about this, the more I am looking forward to one day revisiting Alola. It's the game that I've probably the gen that I've probably played the least.
I think I've played
it's
it
the
once.
one that. Yeah, I think I've only played it through to completion twice. And it's something that there's something about it that keeps trying to pull me back in. I just need to sit down and find the time to play it again.
If it didn't take 3 hours to get off the first island, then I'd pick it up. I think that is my problem with it. It takes 3 to 4 hours to get off the first island, and that's just too much.
It almost does need a skip the tutorial section, or skip the tutorial part where it's almost a skip all that, and then it's literally just
like the whole saving Nebby for the first time. You walk into town, have a cutscene.
Yep.
You walk up to the bridge, have a cutscene. Walk across the bridge, have a cutscene. Walk back across the bridge, have a cutscene. Walk down the stairs, have a cutscene. Oh, right, now you got to go meet the professor. You go to the professor's house, have a cutscene. It's like, stop. This doesn't need to be this way.
Nope. Agreed. They do. Yeah. One of the things that needs to be resolved in any future Pokemon game. Are we done with the Legends? I was going to say Arceus then. Legends of Alola.
Unless you've got any other thoughts.
Not without jumping down a rabbit hole, I think.
Do it,
so
rabbit hole.
I'm happy to. So, we haven't even discussed Necrozma, Lunala, Solgaleo. Solgaleo. We haven't even discussed them. Do you think we need them? It feels like Necrozma was it opens up a can of worms if you introduce Necrozma in a past version of Alola. But maybe you just go into the future, like you said, because then it's not an issue.
Or you do it another way, and you have actually the Island Guardians, Lunala and Solgaleo, so we've got 2 versions of Nebby in this world, are all standing guard and ready to fight an influx of Ultra Beasts led by Necrozma.
Okay.
And that's why they needed to bring the kahunas together, because they knew this was coming and they needed everyone on side with each other so they could have this big war against what was coming.
Because that's how you also bring in the Z crystal, then, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What are the weapons that we can use to fight these powerful monsters through? And it's the Z moves. And maybe going back to our crazy psychic person, like maybe that is why the Aether Foundation gets started up, because they go, okay, we heard what happened, and we need to build up, some way to fight them in the future. But over time, that gets corrupted into, I want to bring, whatever her name is, wants to bring the Ultra. But that explains how she's aware of them.
Well, she's aware of them because her husband gets nicked by one.
Oh yeah, that's in the games, isn't it? It's in the games and the anime.
It's hinted at in the games. It's explicitly stated in the anime. Although Lusamine is a completely different character across the games and the anime.
Yeah.
She's a psychopath in the games.
Is she a psychopath in both games? Didn't they change her character somewhat between Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon to make her more sympathetic?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
Think they did. I don't think they succeeded, because Ultra Moon's the only one I've ever played, and I thought she was a psychopath.
Just a little bit. What else? What else is there that I'd want to? I don't think there's much else, to be quite honest with you. I think that's it.
Yeah, that's the broad strokes of it, anyway.
Yeah, I think there's a good story to be told there, and again, as I've mentioned, Game Freak just not repeating what they've done in the past. Like, okay, how do you take this game and flip it on its head so you have a lot of the returning Pokemon, but presented in a new way? And it'd be a great way to flesh out some of the Tapus a little bit more. That everyone remembers Tapu Koko, but the others didn't really get a load of love, did they?
Not massively. Although, while we're on Legends as well, give me a reason why the Zygarde cells are there.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I personally would just remove them. If we're getting that in Legends ZA. Yeah. But that's how you tie in Legends ZA to the Alola game, is maybe you actually have one where, okay, Alola, the Legends Alola, is a direct sequel to Legends ZA, and you find out why the Zygarde cells are in Alola, and maybe they're in Alola because Zygarde realizes that this is the spot it needs to be in order to prevent some kind of calamity.
Yeah, I mean, trying to think, because I know in the anime there's 2 Zygardes. Technically, they're both 50% form and they've fused together. But like one's good and one's evil, so it'd be funny if like the good one was in Kalos and the evil one was out in Alola.
Ooh.
Like during whatever happens in Legend Z2A, Zygarde gets splits off and we're like, get rid of it. Where do we put it? I don't know, somewhere. And it disappears to the Alola region for some reason.
An island in the middle of nowhere. No one ever goes there. It'll be fine. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. You okay?
That's it.
Right. Let's move on to the next topic, which is an article on Games Radar with the headline, Pokemon Gen 10 can't fall back into old habits with one recurring mechanic. Now, I'm not going to read the entire thing because there's a lot of fluff in this article, but the last couple of paragraphs wrap it up quite nicely. So, the old mount and transport methods from past games were fun, but they did come with downsides. They couldn't glide or climb up mountains, which is something Rhydon can do when they've fully powered up. Additionally, the old traversal methods required HMs to get past trees and dark caves. This requires wasting a Pokemon's move slot on a HM isn't particularly viable in battle. The next generation of Pokemon needs to find a way to reuse Scarlet and Violet's ability to ride legendaries, but it has to be done in a smart way. It doesn't feel like a repetition of Generation 9. Going back to old forms of transport would be a bad move, especially after the convenience of Scarlet and Violet mounts. Scarlet and Violet introduced it an interesting way to get around while switching up the formula of how legendaries are encountered. The next generation should also feature legendaries that serve as mounts, but it needs to be done uniquely. Returning to old means of transport would feel too stale. Now, Conor, I know you've been saving this rant, so we got to this point. So, couldn't Glidle climb up mountains?
Legends already did it. Legends already had the answer to this. It's fine. We just ride Pokemon. Like, it's fine. We just swap. As long as it's easier to swap to the one you want, i.e., get rid of the bear. We don't need Ursaluna in there. It's kind of a waste, and made swapping between them really stale. Yeah, Legends Arceus already did it. We had HMs for Rock Climb, and if we added Fly into a game these days, surely it would just be soaring. I see no reason why that couldn't be a thing. I hate the way that people go, oh, we can't go back to HMs. HMs weren't bad, guys. I had a whole video on this. They had a purpose. Nope. They had a purpose, and they served it well. The only problem with HMs, I think, really, there are two. There is one. No, there's not. There's one problem with them. It took a move slot.
Yeah, that's the only issue with them. It's the only issue. And you know what? The Pokemon ROM hack community has already fixed this, because Radical Red is usually held up as one of the best ROM hacks. If you need to cut, as long as you have a Pokemon in your team that could learn cut, it will cut down the tree. You don't need to teach cut. Your HM just goes into your bag, and then it's just an automated thing. HMs, as I'm pretty sure you talked about in your video, weren't there to. They were a way to ensure that the story was kept on track, but also reward the player with exploration later on once they kind of unlock certain HMs. That's something that was sorely missing in Scarlet and Violet. Okay, you've got your ride Pokemon, and most of the islands you can explore straight off the bat, with the exception of a couple of lakes that you couldn't swim in, and a couple of areas that you couldn't reach high enough or jump far enough, that people bugged anyway in order to accomplish it. So it didn't matter in the end. I think that I don't think going back to HMs is a bad thing, so long as they modernize it.
Yeah, I think you still need every time I talk about this, I give what I'd actually like, which is to basically have a version of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee's ride functions, and have that kind of combined with HMs. So, for instance, saddles is the only way I can think about it, but maybe that's me thinking about Power World, and I don't necessarily need the Power World option where it's every single Pokemon needs a different saddle. But, for instance, maybe you need the saddle and reins in order to ride a Pokemon, because otherwise you just can't ride it. And maybe you need a seafaring saddle, a flying saddle. I don't know. I don't think that's how you do it. But as I say, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee just went, oh, okay, here's a chair with balloons. So we can make this stuff up. It's fine.
Yeah.
I just think it would be much better to have this kind of, because again, realistically, they still have the same element of HMs already in there, which is a case of some form of transport is locked off until a certain point in the game. Now, sure, in Gen 9, you could go around and do whichever part of the game you wanted first, but realistically, you were getting Surf like third or fourth or something like that. It wasn't the first one you were getting. And the Glide was probably the last. I think. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but it was something like that. And I think Legends Arceus kind of had it quite nice where, you got the swimming from halfway through the second place that you went. the Cobalt Coastlands. And then not only did that open up a whole second half of that area where you got to go over to the volcano and you got to go around the back of the island and stuff like that, but it also opened up more to explore in the first area.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is a lot of fun, is being able to re-explore places you've already been is the best part of HMs. Now, I'd love to see, as I say, I'd love to see some form of ride Pokemon. I'd love to see it on any Pokemon I catch. I'm personally not opposed to the idea of like, oh, if I want to fly, I need to have a flyer with me. I don't hate the idea because it makes me feel more attached to them. I can understand why people are a little bit annoyed at that. But fine, you just have you create your own HM party, whatever. You know, maybe Arcanine is one of the faster Pokemons, or Rapidash is one of the faster Pokemons, so you have them in your HM party, but you don't have them in your actual party because they're not great in battle. Fine, cool. I that's what I want. And I know I'm asking a lot, but come on, Pokemon, you got all the money.
You have, and I think while I liked the idea of Miraidon and Koraidon being that it's the legendary Pokemon at the start of the game that is your ride Pokemon as well, I don't want to see that again. And I don't think we will, because as we've said, Game Freak are very good at, okay, how do we take that formula and we change elements of it moving forward? So I don't think we're going to get a legendary ride Pokemon at the start of the game. I just don't. They will do something different, and I'm sure of that. Do I think they'll move maybe further back in terms of how HMs have functioned in the past? I don't think they will. And the reason why is because once they moved away from HMs in Gen 7, it was Gen 7 that got finally, Sun and Moon finally got rid of the HMs, and they had the ride Pokemon. So you got Charizard, Tauros, all those other things. They, in Gen 8 and then Gen 9, they've gone, okay, how can we tweak things? I mean, Gen 8 was weird because we got a bike of all things.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Didn't like that at all. But
well,
Gen
actually,
9
I didn't like either of the
new.
versions where they had a bike that did everything.
Yeah, the bike did everything, didn't it? Because the bike could also go on the water.
Yeah. So in Gen 8, you had a bike that did everything. And in Gen 9, you had a bike that did everything, but was also a Pokemon.
Yes, you did have a bike that did everything. But how? So yeah. So the I think my issue isn't so much with how they implement ride mechanics, HMs, whatever. My issue is the fact with making whatever implementation feel like it's worth it. So, for example, Gen 8, you couldn't really go out back and explore anywhere. Gen 9, unlocking additional HMs, Herba Mystica, for your ride Pokemon, didn't really make that much of a difference, to be quite honest with you, because, okay, you know, I can at the start of the game, I can still get to the top of the mountain. It doesn't matter if I've got Rock Climb, because I've already made it to the top of my mountain. Doesn't matter if I've got Glide. I can just make it up there. That was the issue. I would much rather see them, whatever implementation they bring in, allow us to either gateway some of those areas. So it's a case of, oh, you want to go up there? Well, I'm sorry, but you need to do a bit of legwork. Or, as you've mentioned, oh, you want to go back and explore that area? Well, we recommend that you get whatever power, whatever HM it is. So that exploration, you're rewarded for, which we didn't get in Generation 9. I think that the article fails to capture the real point that you've mentioned about why HMs had their usefulness, but were poorly implemented. And I think Game Freak's moved along and kind of gone, oh, HMs are bad, without actually understanding why they originally implemented them.
I don't think they have, because again, I think the ride system was a good implementation. I think the ride Pokemon in Legends Arceus was a good implementation. These were still things that, as I say, let you explore earlier areas better. They they blocked off certain parts of the game until you got so far. They were effectively HMs by any other name. And I do find it completely funny that they didn't even try and hide it in Gen 9, that Herba Mystica HM. You know, it was right there in front of us, and everybody missed it. I think it goes again on the thing of whether or not we think that Legends Z2A. Well, no, because this article's talking about Gen 10, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think Gen 10 cannot be open world. Like, I don't want Legends to be open world. I want it to be semi-open world,
Agreed.
similar to the Legends Arceus. I think that worked better, but I don't think Gen 10 can go backwards now.
No,
Which
it's
then means that if you're going to introduce some kind of HM, it needs to be something that people can pick up whenever. Which could be kind of cool in and of itself, of a case of like, oh, okay, I can go catch a water Pokemon whenever I want. And then I can go to the water temple whenever I want, for instance, and learn how to swim with my Pokemon. Like, games don't have to make sense. I remember distinctly
no, they don't.
A big bear with a bag of money going, come on, Spiral, I'll teach you how to swim.
Good Spyro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like the Resident Evil 4, where it's like, oh, you need a key to get past this fence. I'm like, let me hop the fence. Like, I can hop
3
the fence.
foot.
I can. Yeah, I could do it. Okay, here's an idea. Maybe the way they implement it is Gen 10. Big island again, because I agree that they can't go backwards. It's a bit like the move from 2D to 3D. They can't go back because it'll be seen as a backward step. It would be seen as, oh, we're having to make what's the word I'm looking for? They're having to just remove features, I guess. I'm not quite sure how to explain it, but they just can't.
Pokemon
can't
remove features?
To go back.
That's never ever happened.
Game Freak would never do that. But the way so we have to have an open world. So I think that the way you do it is almost, okay, whatever phrase, whatever terminology you want to use, it's a case of, oh, the island is completely open for you to explore, but you need to improve your team, your Pokemon via HMs, whatever, to do it. And the way that you do it is a way that they've never done it before of, okay, you've passed this checkpoint. Which of the abilities do you want? You can have Surf. You can have Flying. You can have Rock Climb. And they're the ways to let you explore different parts of the area or different parts of the world. And you do it in a different way that kind of feels like it's rewarding exploration because it's giving you as a player an option, a choice. So, there could be mountains that there are just no way to get up there. There could be, things within the clouds, no way to get up there. There could be surfing where there is no way to get to the islands in the lake without having one of these abilities. And it would reward you for beating parts of the game, but also give you that feeling of exploration of, oh, I can now go to this area because I have the ability to do so.
Okay, I just had a really, really weird thought. I don't like the idea of it being one big island again. I actually hated that.
I don't. I do as well. But where did they go from? Like, how? Okay,
I'll tell you where they go. So
go
it has to be open world, right? You have to be able to do.
Yeah.
I don't think you should have to do anything in any order. I think there should be no. You do these first couple of things first, and then that opens up the rest of the world. Like,
agreed.
Maybe the way you do it is you're on an island, okay, and there's another island a little bit out. You can't swim. And you can't swim with your Pokemon. You can go to, as I say, some kind of water temple, learn how to swim with your Pokemon. Or you can go to this dojo where they teach you how to run real fast on your Pokemon. And at low tide, there is a small bridge that arrives. So you can either go that way and wait for low tide and then sprint across this bridge that shows up, or you can surf across. You can do whatever you want. It's entirely up to you. I don't know. I'm having
what I like about that,
trying to make Pokemon too open world makes it feel dull. That's my biggest problem.
And that was my problem with Gen 9. Well, one of my problems with Gen 9 was the fact that by making this big open world, it feels emptier than ever because there's nothing there, because they haven't filled it with anything, which is why, semi-open world Legends Arceus, at least they are able to hide well, they don't even have to hide it. It's like, okay, the fire area is different than the grasslands area because they don't need to worry about, okay, well, so how would a grassland area neatly transition to a big volcano? Which is why so many of the areas in Paldea just look so boring and bland and samey. So how do you have an open world being able to hide those transitions? And yeah, I think you've touched on it there, where it's a bunch of islands, like going back to Alola again, a bunch of islands where, okay, what's the transition between them? Well, it's water. It's a lake. You don't need to think anything more about it than that. And that explains why one island is all sandy and the other island is all grassy, because you don't need to worry about the connecting feature between them. And yeah,
there's already a boat service. You can already get a boat to whatever island you want. Similar to how you went from Dewford in Hoenn. You could skip all this route. And you can't see any of it until you learn to surf. So there's still stuff to explore here, but no, the world's open. You can go wherever you want. You just can't explore all of it until later.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about this idea of giving players multiple options to accomplish the same thing. Because then it gives you, I played Pokemon my way. It was my experience. A bit like the shrines, or some of the shrines in Breath of the Wild, of how did you, having conversations about how did you solve that? Oh, I solved it this way. Oh, that's not how I solved it. And I've had that before, where I've solved something and thought, this is really difficult, but I did it, looked it up online, and I've realized, oh, I did that in a really weird way. It worked, but it was a really weird way and completely different to what other people have done.
They seem to have just tangential off that. They seem to have doubled down on that now with the new Legend of Zelda game, where you play it as Zelda. They're just like, look, it's basically a big toy box. We put a bunch of things in there and have fun. See how you beat it. We don't care anymore.
Yeah. And I actually love that. I actually love that. And I'd love to see Pokemon, take a similar approach of, okay, here are your story beats, but between those story beats, how you get between them, entirely up to you. And some form of HM mechanic is the way to accomplish that. The blueprint's already there. They just need to apply it in a more creative way.
Yeah. There's everything they need is already in the game. They just need to actually use it.
Yeah, agreed. I believe that's the show for this week, Conor, unless you've got anything else you want to
add? No, there was a slightly different topic, but it's fine. It's been a long day. I think we've been a bit rambly this episode anyway, so I apologize for that. It is late.
It's like 11 o'clock for us at night. That's the show for this week. If you've gotten this far, you're just a top dollar, aren't you? Before you go, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave a review on the podcast platform of your choice. If you're watching on YouTube, then please leave a like and subscribe, as it really helps out the podcast. Conor, where can we find you?
You can find me on my YouTube channel at Captain Fidget.
And I'm Ben. You can find Professor Hoenn Gaming on YouTube and Professor Hoenn on Twitter for now. We'll be back next Friday for another week of Pokemon podcast content.
See ya!